Welcome to another episode of NFTV, episode 5. This week we've got Ryco and Joe Powell joining us. They are the creators of the Unethical Cupid NFT collection that will be dropping later this month. And they also created maybe the best series, I'd say the best series to be released so far in the Roads to Rome show that we recently released on Rad, and you can watch on YouTube as well. Incredible content creators, producers. Joe does voiceover acting. I'm not sure if Ryco does voiceover acting. We'll get into that here in just a few minutes, but incredible content. If you guys haven't checked it out, they have 2 episodes that total about 45 minutes in length, and I've watched both of them, and they are hilarious. They're very well produced. The voiceover work is incredible. The music is good. I laughed the whole time. Can't recommend it enough. Definitely the best content I've checked out in the space so far. So welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining us today. King Joe and King Ryco, how are you doing today, Kings?
Hey, what's up? Thank you so much for having us. Can you hear me?
Yep, hear you fine.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm doing okay. I actually had I ended up oddly enough in the ER last night, so I'm catching up on a little sleep, but I'm all good.
Are you okay? Yeah, you're okay?
Yeah, I'm all good.
Good.
So a little
We
bit
must
tired.
keep this man alive. It's essential.
So why don't you guys start?
Someone bring him an IV bag.
We'd love to hear how you guys got started. And you know, this is we're about a year deep into this space, and you guys have been in production for what seems like at least that long. So I'd love to hear a little bit of background and get the conversation going. I'd love to hear how you guys got into the NFT space, maybe a little bit about your background, and whether Joe or Ryco wants to go first. Up to you all.
Yeah, sure. I can kind of jump in. So just in terms of like the actual show, you know, we've been building Roads to Rome basically for the past like 4 years, a little bit over. We had first came up with we first came up with the concept basically back in like late 2017, and then kind of developed it over the course of a few years, just with like had an animation studio in Brooklyn, kind of put together a professional teaser. You know, we weren't sure the exact way to kind of go about producing an animated series. We'd never really done anything of that scope. We'd, you know, done some productions. I had done stand-up. Joe had done stand-up. I wrote for a couple websites. But we had never kind of like taken like hold of anything like that big. So over the course of a few years, we had just like produced a teaser. We wrote, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of versions of like pilot scripts and all that stuff. And then we began pitching a couple Hollywood studios in like 2019. And then basically we pitched Frederator Studios. And after that point, we kind of realized we needed to make some like major changes to the show. And then we were just going to end up self-producing an entire pilot. So we weren't really sure how that would work. But it ended up working out. And then after we made the pilot, you know, this last year, basically we had seen like I am pretty crypto native, but I had never taken the leap into NFTs or into Web3, which in retrospect I feel a little silly, but but we kind of had NFTs pop onto our radar. We saw the things that like Deadheads were doing. We saw some of the things Stoner Cats were doing. We actually had begun to build out Unethical Cupids about a month before Stoner Cats launched. But it was kind of cool to be like, oh, okay, so that's like a similar project. They're doing something similar to this kind of strange idea. So it was just kind of a win-win for us in the NFT space, where we were like, you know, independent production is super expensive. And there's this cool opportunity to open the show up to, you know, like a dedicated audience of fans and like begin to build something kind of cool and something kind of special together, and like creatively collaborate in a way that's not generally done for most entertainment. So that's when we were just like, yeah, let's open it up. We'll co-create everything, you know, character pitching, premise writing, voicing characters, you know, like writer, producer, VA credits, helping us plan season 2, vote on which episodes come next. For us, really, when it comes to co-creation, everything is basically on the table. And, you know, it was just kind of a good way to kind of build the community around the project. And obviously, add value to the community while also, raising like a little bit of production capital to continue building out this world and this show and this IP, and the project itself.
Awesome. That's, you guys, you said you were like, you had like some shame of being late. You guys are right on time. You guys were here the same time everybody else showed up. You guys were, and you started working 3 years before everyone else. There's no shame there. You guys are as early as it gets, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. I like that.
I've been here. I'm crypto native as well.
What's
and
that?
I think you guys are here.
What's that saying? The best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The second best time is right now.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So you guys are rolling out the Unethical Cupid. What are the plans for that? And can you give us some details on, I know you said co-creation, everything is on the table. And I think, we are at a very dynamic and trailblazing time where it's best to keep everything on the table these days. And I'd love to hear about some of your plans. I know that the release date is in March. I don't think there's a hard date yet, but anything you could share with us on Unethical Cupids?
Sure. So yeah, we haven't released a hard date yet. I mean, we're pretty zeroed in on probably towards the end of March, around maybe it's looking like March 22nd, but we haven't formally announced it. So yeah, with Unethical Cupids, basically those are, your co-creation access tokens for the show, to do kind of like all of those things that I'd mentioned previous. And that's really just the beginning of the project, in terms of like where the actual project itself is headed, because it's kind of interesting. We have like a few spokes on the wheel. We obviously have the Roads to Rome animated series, but then the cool thing about Web3 is that, we have the NFT aspect of the project where it's like, if we can begin organically building and we can begin delivering on our roadmaps, it's one of those things where the project, we would really like the community to kind of take hold of the project itself and decide, like how they want to extract value from the actual NFT portion of the project, not just from collaborating on the show. So I think the coolest thing about Web3 is down the line, if we're able to be successful, I mean, we are a production company first, but that doesn't mean that we can't expand into, like gamifications, internal ecosystems, meta build outs, really anything of that nature. And I kind of think that's the coolest part about the space, where it's like everything is on the table. But I do think like, initially we're just going to have to continue delivering on like roadmap activations, that we've promised to the community, and continue to produce like funny, high quality co-created content. So that's kind of our short-term goal, is really like the production and the creative collaboration with the community. But I think for the long-term vision, like everything is doable. And, we really want to try to find ways to provide value to everybody in the community. And, whether it's through, anything I mentioned, kind of like games, or even something that's innovative that hasn't come out yet. Every time I look up in the space, there's something new. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I do know. You guys, you for a two-man team, you guys have really done a heavenly job on production. And as I go through your production team list, I mean, you guys are really coordinating with a lot of people. You've got a lot of voiceover work going. How much work is that for two people? Is it overwhelming amount taking on all of this as a two-man team? And I know the team is bigger than that, but I mean, top down, is it an overwhelming amount of work that has been a big difference from traditional work that you all have done, or is this pretty much the same type of undertaking, just in a new medium for you?
I'll be honest, it's a lot. I'll be honest, it really is a lot.
It looks like a lot. I mean, you guys are crushing it. It looks like a lot.
Yeah, no, it is a lot. The funny thing is, it's for Joe and I, obviously, we write it, and then once we write it, he and I, you had asked if I do voices. I do. Joe's better. He does the better voices, but we write it, we voice it, and then obviously we work with the rest of the voice acting team and all that stuff, and then we send it off to the animators. So kind of managing this project, and then managing the actual production is a ton of work. But really the first thing we're going to do post mint is to hire an additional animator, because as much as I think it's a preposterous amount of work for Joe and I, it's even more for the animator. Animation, as I'm sure it's like pretty exhaustive. and pretty time consuming.
Yep.
So our biggest thing and like our biggest push up front is to get another animator on board here so that we can begin to increase turnaround time and even increase production quality. There's things like it'd be nice also to bring another background artist on board. So I think that everybody on our team kind of has their hands full, like myself, Joe, but also the animator as well. I mean, what he does is he's as a one man show. He's pretty impressive. So
Epic. Absolutely. I agree.
yeah.
So as you guys are viewing your roadmap right now, and you guys are 2 episodes deep, are you? I'm very interested to know this, and I don't know even if this is an acceptable question to ask this early in your production and this early in your roadmap. But let's say all goes according to plan, and 2 years down the road, you guys are sitting on 20 episodes and well-produced content. As that content picks up popularity, it reaches outside of the Web3 native space or user space, and it gains its own popularity in traditional avenues. How do you all anticipate that management evolving with the project, and is that something you have given thought to today, that far down the road, of if this were to if you all did get an option to get picked up or do a production deal with a big production house, have you guys considered how that would transition in the space, and kind of how the community would transition with that? Is that like a goal? Is that a key goal for a project like this, creating content in the Web3 space?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely something we've considered. I mean, I think with any kind of production, at least initially when you first get into it, like with what we did, the goal is always to be picked up. Um, in terms of how that would work from like a legality standpoint, it honestly is like way over my head.
Same. That's why I'm asking. Is because that's what really piques my interest now, as these types of considerations.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just an interesting thing because then, like if you sign with like one of these big studios, then they take the rights of the IP to the show. So it's just an interesting thing where it's like, what now happens with merch? Say like if we have like we have a Genesis merch line that comes out, and if the show were to take off and the merch, does very well, generally a studio, when they come in and pick you up, they end up having the rights to most of that. Um, so yeah, I'm actually not quite sure what it would look like. I think Joe and I and Ben have discussed. I think actually our ideal is probably a little bit different than that. I think that our ideal is to honestly be like an independent animation studio where we would have like our own brick and mortar, and then we would probably launch some sort of like DAO structure where we would allow our like token holders to vote on little independent animation series that we pick up and fund. So there's actually already a couple like independent animation series on YouTube that Joe and I are big fans of. We think their work is like really excellent. Um, and then I think what we would really try to do is pick up these shows, introduce some of the things that we've learned through NFTs, and issue these series basically as like additional series under the Roads to Rome umbrella, and introduce co-creation and the things, and some things that have worked and some things that our community wants. And if you hold an Unethical Cupid, it'll probably be something where like you'll get a free mint into this other project if you want it. So, I mean, that's it's like not set in stone, obviously, because the space has changed. But I think ideally we would really like to remain independent. But of course, if Hulu comes knocking,
right, we're not gonna not answer. Yeah, we'll take the call.
That's gonna change things real quick. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of the best answer I can give you is
That's
from
great.
like yeah.
When you guys started off your production and your day one getting started, and it seems that you kind of were eyeing traditional media paths. If you've been in the space, you've been working on it for a couple of years, then I would assume that would probably be the initial vision. How and when did it come into play of like, this is an option that we see as viable and lucrative and a way to keep control? Can you tell me a little bit about what you saw and what what drew you into the Web3 space. I know you said you want to stay independent, and I know that's a big piece of it, but maybe something that piqued your interest, that was like, we have to seriously look at this and consider this as our absolute vision here. And you guys did transition at some point. I'd be interested to hear how that transition took place.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think that the most appealing thing about the Web3 space is you have like some element of control as to like whether your project works or not. I think that the problem we found is when we were, reaching out and talking to agents and talking to managers and pitching Hollywood and filing pitch forms, is you're sitting here signing your life away, just to get in the door of these meetings. And, I mean, we had an issue back in 2019 where we had sent our entire pitch deck to a studio, and then like a year and a half later, there was like a press release that a very, very similar show was coming out, based in like a similar world. So, for us, we kind of grew really tired of running around and pitching and trying to, get people to watch this and to read this. It's just super difficult if you're independent to kind of get through the door. Um, so I think that when we saw the Web3 opportunity, it's like, okay, this is something within our control. We have to build a good project. We have to find ways to provide utility and value to our community. And if we can do that, and if we can build slow and organically, then like we don't have to be knocking on a million people's doors just for the opportunity to pitch. And just the more we learned about kind of like, the more we learned about the like current production and distribution model, the more it was like, well, I don't know how many people are going to give us an opportunity to even get in the door. So, this was like a little bit more. It honestly, in a strange way, for like a new innovative space, it actually seemed more realistic to us, like significantly more realistic. And also, it's just kind of a cool space that we were interested in getting into. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
What do you?
Hey, I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, shoot, King. Anybody else have any questions? Feel free to raise your hand as well. This is Tony, our CEO, guys.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously, we've thought a lot about this because we see platforms taking the rights to content. I mean, they basically come in, pay a huge amount of money, but then the creators lose control. And so you commented on that a little bit, and so we don't take rights. I mean, Rad, our platform doesn't take rights, and if we're going to build something in the Web3 space, obviously we want it to be open, and we've seen this happen a lot, right? You even said it, like if Hulu comes knocking, of course that's the natural mindset, is like we'll take their money and we'll get it on Hulu, because then it's about money and awareness. But I'm curious to hear everybody in the space like comments about how how best to get out of that dynamic, because really what we need to get into as a space in Web3 and for content and creators and funding is, if you're doing something that is, say, funded by an NFT project, and the NFTs themselves convey the rights to a character, and you can put that on t-shirts or whatever, and then the resulting content that comes from that is going to be distributed in a way that the original creators retain the rights to that, as opposed to losing the rights to kind of an old school traditional platform. Like, there's a breakdown in there somewhere. And then really, so like, what's the biggest issue that stops us from doing that, and having everything be fully kind of Web3 native? Is it straight up money? Is it that, like, because we're talking to a number of different groups that are telling us that any kind of high quality show, if per episode is $500,000 to $1 million to produce, you can obviously get it together with a smaller team and less budget. But if you're going to get something onto one of the top tier platforms and have them pick it up, that's kind of the range that you're talking about. So if you're talking about a 10 episode series, that's $1 million an episode. You can't, like, how do you fund that with an NFT project? It's like, maybe Bored Apes could do it and a handful of other ones, but
maybe
maybe, but like even Stoner Cats it seems like it's that's struggling a little bit in terms of, and they have some real star power behind
Yeah,
it. So
yeah.
I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on, like, what would it take to get you to say no to Hulu knocking at the door? Like, when does it
Awesome question.
when do you, like, no, I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to Netflix. I'm going to a Web3 platform. And is it money? Is it creative control? Is it maintaining the rights? Like, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I don't know, Joe. I don't know if you would jump in. I mean, I know, at least for me, we've talked a lot about creative control, and just kind of like being able to write it the way you want to write it, and being able to see the vision play out the way you want to see it. So, to be entirely honest, I guess from my perspective, just like a quick answer without like having put a ton of thought into it, would be like, if the money is comparable and we would maintain creative control, I definitely wouldn't leave the Web3 space for a network.
100%. I agree with you. I mean, right now for us, it's definitely production money. That's the biggest issue, because we're out of pocket on 3 full episodes, and you know how expensive that can get. So it's kind of a mixture of both right now, where we're definitely willing to give up some creative control, but we're more willing to give it up to our community of holders who are supporting us. That's where I want to give up creative control to. The people who are actually
Great
fans of
answer.
it and want to see these different things happen in the series. I mean, that's where some of the greatest ideas have come from so far. So it's kind of that
Totally.
balancing act between, we're certainly not greedy. We just want to make a really funny show and have everybody be involved. So it's kind of that fine middle ground there that we'd have to find. So
Yeah. It's almost like as much of an art as a science, in terms of, like, what's the discount, if it's like somebody's coming in with $10 million, but you lose all creative control, or somebody's coming in with $3 million and you maintain all creative control.
right, exactly.
Which,
Yeah, I mean,
where do you land?
exactly. I honestly think the second option is better, to be honest with you. I think that's where our conversations have mostly led to, and what's brought us here. So
That's where the real innovation happens.
right.
Netflix will buy it for 10 million, put it on for one season, you lose the rights, and then cancel it.
Right.
exactly.
Look, that's like, and that happens all the time. That happens all the time, and these people have worked on their stuff for
Yeah.
5 years, or sometimes they buy the show and then they just shelf it, and it's like, oh man,
Yeah.
And then it excludes the community that's kind of supported us here throughout it. And it's like, I don't want to exclude these people that have had our back from the beginning. We're willing to make less to enjoy it more,
Yeah, that's great. Good insight.
What really a good differentiator here between your all's model and somebody like Stoner Cats is requiring ownership of their NFT to even view the content. And that's, we get into some real interesting places of a saying I read from the Hitmakers book that really stuck with me is, if content is king, distribution is the kingdom. And I think about that quote literally every day. And I think to myself, the goal is to have as many people watching as possible, because that's the advertising model and the monetization models that have really stuck in media for the last 20 years. And as that model begins to see competition from models like the Web3 space and decentralized production methods, I'm really curious as to where you guys see those two models differentiating. Do you feel like the Stoner Cats model of owning the NFT in order to view the content, what do you think about that model? And do you think it's setting your community up for greater success, or a hard takeoff?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, I don't know. I think from our perspective, my vision for it was that, like, Roads to Rome would always be free for anybody, token holder or not token holder, but token holders would get added value. I kind of prefer that model because I think it just gives you a little bit more flexibility. I mean, if the show really were to take off and your audience is limited to a very specific community, well, now you're losing out on monetization potential across, whether it's like YouTube ads or like even like a sponsorship deal or really any kind of monetizations. And I think the goal is that like eventually from like a legal perspective, a lot of these like little issues will be put to bed in terms of like and it, like what is a security and what's not a security. So hopefully there can be some sort of revenue sharing like revenue sharing model with our community. So I don't know, I think from our perspective, we'd want as many people to see it as possible because we think that gives actually the most value to the community.
Right.
If you can have 10 million people watching, or 10 million views per episode, I think that's far more valuable to the community, than like exclusively walled content. That said, though, like our partnership with your team is really cool because like I envision it in a way where like it's a way to add value like to the community through certain walled content. So while the show itself will always be free, perhaps we have a Thanksgiving episode, a holiday episode, a July 4th episode, whatever, and that potentially would be walled off through your guys' platform. And then perhaps something that could be like only community can view. But I think in general, I think Joe and I have always liked the idea of trying to get this out to as many people as possible because I think that just gives you more options.
Great answer. I agree. I completely agree with everything you said of as far as, you bring up RAD, and that's where I really think RAD is striking a chord with users and the Web3 space is that we are freemium. We have both sides. And I think of what power YouTube could take from the content creation space if they introduced a freemium model. Is that going to happen? No, YouTube can they can't keep up with all of the content that violates rights. And them being as old as they are and having as much content as they have on there, they're kind of in this weird gray area of course there's tons of infringing content on there, but what are we going to do about it? They're not going to find every single infringement and remove it. And that's something that Netflix can't afford to do with their huge production deals and content deals and movie rights and things like that. They can't be having any questions like that. But a platform like RAD, that is a new vision for creators and Web3 developers, to me feels like there's just such great opportunity for a mixed model, just like you spoke of do all of that. You can definitely put a piece of content as a special feature or even a one-off purchase of an episode that is like you said, a Thanksgiving or a Valentine's Day episode or something that you guys would fit branding. Valentine's Day with Unethical Cupids. If you had to have the Unethical Cupid to view it, that is something that may spark 10,000 sales of Unethical Cupids and people wanting to, fight for the floor of those to be able to view. Speaking of that, have you guys decided on which platform, which L1 you will be releasing, or Polygon L2? Have you guys considered that for Unethical Cupids and made any decisions there?
So yeah, the Unethical Cupids project is going to launch on Ethereum. I assume that's what you're asking.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sometimes the technical speak. I'm getting a lot better, but I always just want to make sure. But yeah, so right now, we're kind of considering doing basically like a limited run drop here at the end of March. And the reason we would kind of do that is because it would allow us to launch soon while also kind of holding us accountable to deliver like 100% on our roadmap to the community, put out a few more episodes, and then we might actually build out the entire collection through a series of drops. And all of those future drops would be dependent on us hitting certain roadmap activations and production goals. So it's kind of an interesting structure. We haven't really seen it that much in the space. It's kind of like a creator accountability structure where it's like, you guys don't know that much about us. We don't know that much about you. We're going to start small with probably like 1,000 to maybe 2,000 tokens. We'll make an announcement sometime soon. So it's kind of nice because it's like, well, this allows us to launch immediately. It holds ourselves accountable. And additionally, keeping our community small up front will allow kind of like the earliest supporters and the OGs, like more direct participation in the show, more co-creation opportunities, like more opportunities to partner with us and more opportunities to kind of tell us where they want the show and the project to kind of go as we continue to organically build out this entire standard collection to the more standard 10,000 tokens. So that's kind of what we're thinking now. We're probably looking at like March 22nd for a mint. And then we're probably looking somewhere around like 0.05 ETH. But we will be making a formal announcement probably here in the next couple days.
Wonderful. Awesome. I'll tell you, you're speaking on it and saying you're kind of new to the space. You don't sound new at all, Ryco. Sounds like you know exactly what's going on, King.
I'm learning, man. It has been a trial by fire, but yeah, it's cool, man. I like the space. I got to say, like,
yeah, it's fun.
when I first my head was spinning, and Joe and I were like, man, this is wild. And then the more I get into it, the more I'm like, I love it here. Everyone's so cool.
Yeah.
You guys are fantastic. You guys have been the best. And we're honestly just very excited. We are.
So
we
are
are
we.
excited.
I mean, you guys creating the content that you are is really special to see in this space. There's a lot of people with making big promises and, grandiose roadmap ideas, but seeing somebody come out in your guys' first episode, that's what really blew me away. Was I found out about Roads to Rome just organically, and then went to your YouTube page and I was like, oh shit, 37 minutes or whatever the first episode was. I was like, I was expecting a 5-minute, we'll watch this just like I would any other little piece of content and I'll be in and out of here. And I was like, oh, I got to come back. so I saved it and I came back later that evening and I watched the whole thing and immediately texted 20 people and was like, hey, this is fire. This is definitely the best content in the space. And I just couldn't believe that you guys put out a 30+ minute piece of content, knowing what it takes to create 1 minute of animated content. And I mean, it's not, people think it's not a huge task of like, oh, we could just spin up some simple animation and be done with it. And it's, yeah, you've obviously not spun up any simple animation and done anything with it. And, to see the amount of people that are working on your guys' stuff. And I clicked on, the info and YouTube and I see your list of people that are helping you with the project. And to me, I was like, this is it. This is the first project I'm seeing that has a team of people that I would, a size of team that I would expect to be creating content of this level. And, that's kind of what it takes. The people, you wonder why the credits are so long at the end of the movie. It's because a second of CGI or animation takes a long time and a lot of work and a lot of money and then sound. And so you guys said something earlier that I'm a sound guy, I'm an audio engineer and artist, and that something I love about animation. And I see every animated movie, every Disney animated movie, I see it as soon as it comes out because the sound aspect is so interesting to me that it has to be it's all imagination. It's not, you're not in the world of normal sounds where it's just like, oh, here's a bird, use a bird. In your animated world, the world could sound like whatever y'all decide the bird sounds like in this world. And as I went through, I see how many people are working on. I would love to hear any details you could give us on your guys' production process of, you're creating 30-minute pieces of content. You have sound people, you're starting with voiceovers, and then you're sending it off to animation. I know that, but like anything you could give us on like what it's really taking to get an episode from beginning to end. Are you guys sitting down with writers, or is it just you? Is it just Ryco and Joe doing that? And what is that basic process of spinning up the episode or the storyline for that episode, and then all the way through to release? And how long is that taking you guys, if you don't mind answering that?
Yeah. So Joe, I don't know if you want to take it.
Sure. Yeah. Ryko and I usually start by writing the episode. We're really the only writers on it, except for our animator. So once we get the base of the episode down, we'll send it off to our animator. He'll review it and he'll come back with his notes. So he's really a co-writer in it as well, because how he sees the animation playing out is such a big aspect of it. So then we all kind of collaborate on that script together. But in terms of the voicing, that's where we actually have really a lot of fun. We have a booth
I
set
can
up in
tell.
my
You
new.
guys' videos are really fun. That's some of the best. That's really fun content, just so you guys know. I enjoy seeing the voiceover content on the timeline. It makes me laugh and really fun.
Yeah, we like to get the camera set up in there and then try to go wild and go back through and see if there's anything funny in there. But we actually found our voice team just through our animator, and it's been incredible connecting with these different people because once you find someone really solid, they're always connecting you to someone else who's really solid. So everything was based off of referrals from our animator, then to a voice actor, our voice actor recommending sound design. So that's how we kind of built it all out.
Beautiful.
But in terms of production, the most fun we have is, in my idea of it at least, is sitting down in Ryco's little apartment in New York City. We have our big whiteboard and just going through Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, punching it up with jokes. We have like a true ball in there. And then the business side of things is when we start losing our minds. That's when we really have a lot of fun. But then we get on like video calls with our voice team. We send them all the notes. They may have notes for their characters. So we really try to let a lot of these are all professionals we're working with. You know, they might not be the most well known, but they're true professionals.
Yeah,
So we kind of
absolutely.
let them do. Yeah, they're incredible. So we kind of give them free range to do things, you know, say things a different way, maybe ad lib something, and we just kind of walk through it with them on FaceTime and go over each line like 2-3 times, get the ones we want. If we want anything redone, we do it right there.
Are you guys bringing in an engineer to record, or one of you two doing that and doing all the takes and keeping track of takes and all? I know that's a lot of work.
Yeah, we actually learned sound design on our end from the ground up, and creating our own voice booth. We were, again, this was just a lot of question asking and getting out there and meeting people. Like Ryko's aunt happened to know a sound engineer, and he gave us all the notes that we would need. We'd send him copies of audio before we really got started. He'd send back what he thought, how to fix the mics, the appropriate range we should be using. So we just learned through asking a ton of questions and collaborating with people.
This is great to hear. Very inspiring.
Yeah,
it took
of course, it took a mountain of time to learn like every single bit, every single part of this, from the writing to the sound design. They're all their own huge barriers to entry, really.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have to learn how to properly format a script. We have to learn how to properly record audio. We recorded audio into the back of the mic for the first 3 days we were doing it.
I saw the NT1A had it turned the wrong
And then we went in there, and Ryco goes, "Oh, it's flipped the wrong way," and we're like, "Oh, you gotta be kidding me!"
That's strong.
There was things like that where it was just, but now we've really hit our stride. Obviously, we've done 3 episodes in terms of writing, voicing, working with our team, working with sound design. So it's really come together. But yeah, I mean, the main take here is that it takes an extremely long time to learn something initially, but once you learn it, you just start to get better and better at it, and interacting with the team and taking notes from that. Our voice actors taught us a lot about voice acting, warm-ups, you know, proper setting, recording settings, all that. So I don't know if I know I jumped around.
No,
here
you
a little
absolutely
bit,
answered it.
I know
I asked 200 questions too in there, so you answered at least 79 of them. Good work.
Well,
Okay,
and it's
good.
also like I think a lot of people just think that, especially in the NFT space, is that, you know, these different artists and groups and creators are releasing an NFT project, and you know, they just put out a bunch of pictures, and that's the extent of it. But to hear the actual process and the amount of work that goes into it, you know, in terms of creating real value, there is a bunch of nonsense that you know, NFT projects are just making another ape derivative or some other kind of, you know, derivative, or just like lazy project that they're putting out there with these grandiose roadmaps, and like they literally don't have anything other than just the pictures, and then have to get into the actual execution of it, and then are like, wait a second, the execution of this is really difficult. And you know, from creation of film, or a creation of a game or whatever it is, the general population who is taking a look at NFTs and buying into NFT projects, it's very easy for people to make big roadmap claims and say that we're going to do this. Eventually, we're going to do this. But like, to hear you guys talk about it, I think is really valuable to the community, because it's not just let's launch a JPEG project and everybody's going to be rich. Like,
can you guys even fire up Pro Tools yet? Yeah.
It's an enormous amount of work, and then that's just to create like one episode, and a lot of this stuff is hit driven as well. So that even if you can get through the production process, you have to nail the writing and the story. Exactly. And it's like, so it's inspirational, I think, to hear you guys talk about the process, and hopefully spread that to people out in the NFT space, because they need to realize that the people who are doing real work are the people that you should be backing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like when we see animated series on a roadmap, we're always like, okay,
okay, see,
like, oh, they're writers too. They got jokes built in already. They're already writers.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, just to kind of touch on that, I do think one of the cool things that Joe and I had discussed about Web3 is that because our journey has been like just such a wild one, and because we're generally self-taught across the board, we were talking about how kind of like Web3 does give us that opportunity where, like, if we can be successful here, and if we can come to market, and if we can launch a successful NFT project alongside an animated series, and we can do it with, like no huge names, but we can produce like really high quality, really good shit, really funny shit, and like all community driven stuff, we're like, that kind of gives us the opportunity to also kind of give back to the independent artist community and be like, hey, you guys can do it. Try to do it in a series of steps, and try to like pivot your shows and the things you're doing into a Web3 model, because there's like a proof of concept now,
Right.
And just kind of like it would be nice to be able to do that, and then to like support other independent creators, because there's so much good stuff out there. Like, there's so much good stuff out there that will never get a look from a network or a streaming platform or anything. But I think the Web3 space is the space for that, because you just appeal to a certain, like you just appeal to a certain community. It doesn't need to be this, 50 million views for every episode. Like, there's a here for everybody to. So it's cool.
I think you're right there. Something I've said for several years. My music just took off in August 2020, and I've been making music since I dropped out of school in 2004, and then I went to Full Sail, and for 15 years, I didn't have any listeners. I went from, I was running laps, serious, I'm dead serious. I was running laps around my apartment when I had 4 listeners at the same time on Spotify, like high-fiving Kay, my girlfriend of 15 years. I'm like, I got 4 listeners. Who are these people? Where are these people? Who are these people with? How did they find my music? And what is going on? And, I was making music because I love creating, and I had to make music. It wasn't I want to. It was something that I felt I had to do. And then one person posted a song on TikTok, and boom. And something that I've really seen over the past 2 years is that you don't need millions and millions of viewers to pay your bills. And a lot of people out here, something we've talked about for the last 2 months doing these shows is, we've had multiple producers on talking about royalties for streaming and songwriting and all the different, when you write a song, what percentage of rights do you get? Well, it depends on the work you did. For myself, I usually do all the work, and I do literally the whole thing. So when I get paid for streaming, it's very different than somebody that gets paid for streaming that just touched a song and got their 5 or 10% of one half of the publishing deal. And something that's really changed in the past 15 years is that overnight, your life can change, and you can find your community of 50,000 viewers that are regularly attending whatever thing you're putting out that will support you. And I think that's kind of where we're entering with the Web3 space is we are finding and realizing that a dedicated community that actually is involved and cares and sees value can make a project thrive. And the road to success doesn't have to be content wasn't out yesterday and today's number one on Netflix. I mean, most of us listening to this, I don't know when you all got into watching some of your favorite shows, but I didn't start watching Breaking Bad until like season 5. I hadn't even heard of that shit. I didn't even know what it was. And then people are like, Breaking Bad's the best show ever. I've never missed an episode. And I'm like, fam, what? It's on A&E? I don't watch I don't know anything on A&E. And then I watch it and I'm like, this is incredible. How did I not know this existed for 5 years? And it seems like the world's getting smaller. It's easier to find your community, and it's easier to streamline art to be the artist you envision being and being successful at that, as opposed to being the artist you think some community wants, or creating the content Hulu wants or Netflix wants. And I like, from the comedy space, I have a lot of friends in the comedy world. That's something that's really changed with podcasting. Is for so long their goal was to be on a TV show, get a TV show. I need my 30 minutes of stand-up, and if my stand-up's good enough, maybe somebody will offer me a sitcom, and then I will have made it. And today, you could have a comedy podcast that's 30 minutes, 3 days a week, and pay all your bills, and that really allows you the time and freedom to create the things you want to create. And maybe they don't pay as well as everybody wished or hoped in the past, but they pay enough. And that's where I think like this space is kind of opening up an entire a plethora of models. Like we can't even see how many new models are in this space. And that's something me and Michael Finney, who joined us as a speaker here, MDF Finney, MDF 365, sorry, Michael. And we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks of how many new models are there. And there's rental models, there's staking models, there's community tokens. There's so much to do here with a community to add value that I think you guys are, you're telling people today some of the struggles and some of the hurdles you had to jump in order to get your show out. And people are like, oh, we're just going to do this. Well, in order to do that, you're going to need to sell every NFT that you have for $100,000, not spend any of that money, and then execute perfectly on your roadmap, or you're going to get to episode 3 and be out of money and have pissed off your whole community and have nobody left supporting you. And like, I think, just what Tony's saying of hearing you guys say that you did have some growing pains and some things to learn of, creating a show is how many different areas of expertise do you need to have to really pull off what you guys are doing, and to have that insight is very valuable. So thank you guys very much for sharing with us today and giving us the inside scoop on what it's taken y'all to get where you are. It's really inspiring and fun to hear.
Absolutely, man. Well, if you have any other questions, we're always around. I'd love to come back on. You're a fantastic host. And
thank you. I appreciate that
very
much.
There's actually one question. Two things. One comment based on what Cam just said. It reminded me of this during COVID, Melissa Etheridge, random, but it stuck with me. Everybody was doing these live shows during COVID because they couldn't go out and tour. And, you wouldn't think of Melissa Etheridge today as like, an absolute A-list superstar in music. She's a legend, no question. But she just launched a live stream concert platform on her website. And I think she had 5,000 people paying her like $10 a month.
Yep.
But she was making 50 G's a month from just a small group of people, who were super fans. And so you can make an enormous amount of money just by finding that small audience. But anyway, my second follow up there, just before you guys bounce out, I would love to hear. I'm always curious. Is what do you see that is missing from the space that you'd like to see, as a video creator and content creator, specifically around you're creating episodes and series and, looking at financing and looking at revenue sharing and how that's built into smart contracts and like what features you want on the platforms themselves that are kind of native and would make your lives easier. Like, has anything popped up, on your journey over the last 12 months in Web3 that made you say like, wow, this would be really great if we had this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like initially the one glaring thing is onboarding people who are kind of in the animation space. I still think now, like I have a lot of friends obviously who support the show. It's hard for them to buy an NFT. They don't get it. They understand what it is we're doing. They understand what the token will provide. They understand that there is a potential to profit. But what they don't understand is setting up an exchange and transferring money to a wallet, and like the difference between a hot wallet and like a ledger and cold storage. I mean, that stuff is it's over, I think, like the vast majority of people's heads. So I think especially with like what we're doing with animation, I think it's still so early. I think the biggest thing that could help is like a little bit more. I mean, like any like developing spaces, having NFTs go a little bit more mainstream. I mean, if you could purchase an unethical Cupid with a credit card, we would really be in business. Life would be much easier. If you could purchase that token, with some sort of just a few less barriers to entry. And I think that stuff's coming. I think like eventually.
Ryco, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So when you're talking to your friends about kind of buying into this brand, right? Are you addressing it as like a monetary kind of economy sort of thing, or are you addressing it as like this philosophical like brand aspect?
Well, we really address it as like collaborating to build out a really good series and then kind of seeing what happens, because I think like it would be disingenuous for us to be like, oh, here's like all of this incredible monetization potential when we don't have a lot of legal clarity and some of the things that we want to do down the line. And I just think that's because it's early. But we've always wanted to like approach this like really authentically. So like we never generally approach it as like, oh, here's like a vessel to profit. It's like, here's an opportunity to support a show that's in its infancy. Imagine getting in on, South Park after the pilot or South Park after the second episode. That's where we are right now. Are we going to be Trey Parker and Matt Stone? That's a pretty tall mountain to climb. If we could just get to base camp there, this thing would be fucking huge.
Yeah.
So then some of the other stuff, right? Like when you're talking about it that way, because South Park doesn't necessarily, they've been around for a long time, and the idea that like you could buy into their show is maybe a foreign idea because they had a different model. But like maybe the other way of explaining it is say like, what if you could have owned or known that like some of those early collectibles associated with the show have increased in value, or that like they gave you access to other things inside of that community over time, right?
I actually love that.
Yeah, that's great.
And that's kind of how I think about a lot of this stuff when I see good models, when I see like you guys were talking, Tony and everything earlier, where it's like, oh, they're just slapping up some images. Like that is super boring to me. I own very few things in this space. I did get a panda, just because like I think that
you're a legend.
Thank you.
Thank you. That I think that extends you some practical access to things in terms of it being like basically your key to a subscription. That makes sense to me. The pandas are cute too. That's fine. But like the functionality is really the point to me. And like, if you can connect those dots where you're saying like, look, yes, you are supporting us in this very early stage. This is also a collectible. It also is going to give you the keys to the kingdom in terms of access and other, rights. I don't want to say like in terms of the IP, but rights in terms of access, and that I think is maybe stuff that I've been looking at with some of my projects as well. So I like hearing what you guys are thinking and talking about. I think Knack has his hand raised. It looks like maybe.
Well, hello, party people. How's everyone doing?
What's up, Knack?
Hello, Knack. How are you, King?
Just another day in paradise.
Sure
enjoying the space. I appreciate y'all coming in and talking. On just the topic you guys were just talking about, like how do we get the point across outside of this is just a JPEG? My go-to little blurb is the internet freed the flow of information. Blockchain will free the flow of value. And we can finally use these smart contracts to give artists some royalties on secondary markets, which they've never really been able to capture, as well as use it as provenance or proof of authenticity for various collectibles or art or whatever it may be.
Love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, hey guys, too. If you ever need anybody to jump in and do a voice, I would love to contribute.
I was just gonna bring that up. They actually, you guys, would you like to tell? You guys recently, promoted some. Have you ever been interested in getting an IMDb credit or an acting credit? And you guys posted a thing that said reach out to us. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and maybe what that process is like for somebody who is interested?
Yeah,
Sure.
Go
ahead, Ryco.
No, you go for it.
No, yeah. It's going to be one of our co-creation benefits, one of our big ones. I mean, that's where we have a lot of fun. Roadster Room has a lot of little side characters that die off in episode or have one or two speaking roles, or sometimes they're this background Roman that appears again and again and again. He's in a grain riot. He's at a show at the Round Theater, that sort of thing. So we're going to open up co-creation. Kind of similar to the way Stoner Cats did, but a little bit different. So we're going to be posting those lines that are going to be that we're looking for a description of the character, and we're going to try to open that for this episode that we're currently producing. But it's definitely coming episode 4.
Wow! So you guys are going to release lines. You're going to put the lines out and then ask for submissions.
Exactly.
Wow! Great model.
Right. So holders will be able to send in their MP4s. We'll kind of give like a basically like, hey, listen, this is what we're looking for. It needs to be of at least this quality because we know not everybody has a certain mic that can record the
Vinny
best
came
quality.
In with the good mic today. I hear you, MDF. I heard you. I heard the mic change this week.
I heard that
no,
too.
I'm using the same mic.
Oh, are you? Dang.
Yeah,
okay, all right. Maybe
just
proximity, maybe.
Connection.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's
probably.
Just that silky voice.
He drank some tea.
He does got this. He's got that sultry voice. He does got that.
I got nice mics. Thank you guys.
Love it.
I'm on IMDb. I'll add you guys on there. I'm happy to do that.
They actually don't have the correct Joe Powell on there, but I'm just gonna let it fly.
You got no. Hey, man, there's like 900 Michael Finneys on there. You have to create your own. You have to start your account and then yeah.
I was like, oh, let him have it. But yeah, so we'll have voice opportunities every single episode. We're gonna try at least 1, but up to 4 because we do have enough range there for that sort of thing, and we want to get people as involved as possible. So.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to say about the voice acting opportunity is there's like, of course, in our community, there's going to be some people who are like actual voice actors, but we're going to try to get everybody involved. So if it's funny and if it's good enough, and if you haven't had your voice included yet, we'll go with you over somebody who's, if it's like a quick side character sideline, as long as it doesn't take away.
Yeah, I love this.
We want to get people involved. Like, obviously, not everybody is going to have a professional quality mic, but like, maybe there's a way Joe and I have talked about, like, if somebody sends us like a rough audio just recorded from the phone and we're like, oh, that's pretty funny, that's good enough, we can always just package up a mic, send it to you, you record on our mic and send the mic back, like prepackaged. So there's a lot of ways. Like, we really do want everybody to get involved. I think from the voicing lines, that's where like we will have a little discretion that's not going to be like completely clear because like we want everybody, to be able to participate, whether you're a professional lover voice actor or whether you just want to scream fuck in the middle of a,
of a death scene.
Yeah.
You know what you can do too is give them some tips about how to kind of like isolate their space and to utilize. If they only have a smartphone, you can still get pretty good quality audio off of an iPhone if you create the environment. So if you're like in a closet and you have clothes hanging up and kind of like dead in that room, and make sure that they're like within a certain proximity of the mic and everything.
Kanye's recorded his vocals for albums with his iPhone, so no reason we can't use iPhone for a one line in a voiceover or
I don't know.
something.
That's a great idea. That really is a great idea, just to give them notes on that so it comes out cleaner
Yeah.
the first time. I love that.
Great
And
idea.
that's the same too, you know, for like anything really. Like if what you guys are doing, even if you have a great mic, like it would have been very useful for somebody to give you some tips on which way to point it, you know, in general.
Hey, I want to ask
Yeah,
you
that
guys,
would have been convenient. That would have saved us 3 days.
before we get off here. I know you guys. I told you guys an hour, and we're approaching that right now. You guys have said co-creation, and that's the term you go with. And you guys are coming from the traditional space and have had success in the traditional space, and coming from the comedy world. And now you're seeing all of these new projects shell out and sell what they're calling IP rights. Did you guys decide against that from the beginning because of your understanding of IP? And how are you guys thinking about IP rights in the space being given to holders of a token? And do you have any thoughts there on like what that means, or any issues that you see with that model?
Yeah, totally. So I think the model we're going for is for like, you know, whatever unethical Cupid you mint, you will actually have the IP rights for that actual piece of art. Just in terms of the IP rights for the show, that becomes like a little bit more complicated. And
Let's roll back a little bit, because I think that you're blurring some lines there. When you say they're going to have intellectual property rights to that NFT,
oh, sorry,
but
not
then
commercial rights.
okay, so that they can like they could make prints of that and sell those prints is basically
Right.
what you're allowing to do. I got
Yeah,
you.
exactly. Sorry,
But they
sorry.
couldn't necessarily include that artwork in a new creation.
To be honest, it's something we have to talk to our legal team about. I don't think Joe and I would be completely opposed if somebody were to take, you know, 5 unethical cupids and kind of do their own little spin-off. To be entirely honest, it's something that we'd even discussed as like a future roadmap activation, as like Act 2, Act 3, being like, well, maybe the community wants to write their own unethical cupid little like 5-minute mini series.
Fanfic.
Yeah. Great idea.
And we're totally open to that. That's something we've discussed just kind of down the line. But yeah, I don't think if anybody wanted to do anything with their specific token, just so long as, you know, like the IP to the show, the logo, you know, like Professor Centaur, the characters, the world, all that stuff, that's probably going to be pretty close to the vest. That'll probably be ours.
Yeah.
So, and that's just to give us like flexibility and options down the line if some sort of incredible situation did present itself where there was a streaming platform that wanted to pick it up. If the IP is entangled and it's not clear, you know, that kind of puts us, and honestly, in some ways, the community like behind the 8 ball, because perhaps if there were to be like a lot of legal clarity on this stuff and there could be like a DAO and, you know, it gets picked up by a network, maybe there is some sort of revenue sharing. So that's just all stuff that's down the line.
So this is the interesting part too, like where you were talking about, you're like, okay, well, I think that it's okay if they were to, you know, do prints of this image. That seems like very easy to state. And then the other side of it is like, we give you, you know, permission to create new work, not necessarily to monetize that work. And then another piece of it is explicitly saying, no, you may not create new merchandise based on these characters and this work that you own the NFT to, because we intend to do these other things and want these other options open. Where it's like, if you have this great opportunity for yourself that presents itself in the future, you know, they're going to say, look, you know, yeah, we want the show, we want all of the traditional rights about creating imagery and objects of merchandise based on these components, and they're going to want to make sure that you know, all that's sealed up. Interesting stuff,
Right.
for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
Does anybody else have any questions for King Ryco and Joe, the creators of Unethical Cupids and the Roads to Rome show, which you can watch on Rad, all the episodes, and on YouTube as well? Robert, I thought you had a question earlier, but it looks like you're muted now. Feel free to throw it in, my king.
No, I don't have any questions today.
Okay,
I
cool.
actually, I've been having issues with my connection, so
Okay.
I'm just kind of jumping in and out. But it's been a good show. I appreciate everything everybody said. That's makes me excited for it.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Robert.
No, thank you guys for having me.
All right. Well, it's been a great week at Rad. We'll be getting our weekly update posted to Medium and Discord here shortly. Lots of very exciting stuff I wish I could share with you all, but a lot of it is legal based and in the final few days, so I don't want to jump the gun and say something that's not gonna make it out. But we have some really exciting developments underway, and I will tell you this. I've been telling a couple people, as you know, you guys mentioned IMDb earlier. We're going to be rolling out very soon a IMDb-like feature on Rad that will be tied to your Web3 domains and track all appearances and content that X produced or whatever that's tied to your Web3 domain. And we have Unstoppable domain and ENS in that already, and it's a feature we've been testing on the back end of app.rad.live, which is live. You can go click around right now. It does have some limited functionality, and we're still testing a lot of stuff, but you can go there now. And if you haven't claimed your 50,000 tokens for your Panda, you can do that as well. And if you're not aware, our Panda Mint is now closed and ended at 202 pandas. Thank you to everyone that picked up a Panda, and we hope you're enjoying your lifetime premium subscription and the aura that you've picked up to date, and lots more in store for you all. Ryco and Joe, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great hearing about what you guys are doing and watching you all develop over the past couple weeks and getting to know you. You have wonderful energy, and you're making incredible content, and it's really fun to watch and to hear. Your process today is inspiring to myself, and I'm sure several other listeners, and really eye-opening to, just some of the hurdles that anybody would face entering this space. And we really appreciate you sharing some of those, and even being able to laugh at yourselves and share mistakes and growing pains that you've had along the way. It's really powerful. Thank you.
Thank you so much
Of course. Thank you.
Y'all very
It's really
welcome.
an honor to talk to you guys. You guys are really, really fun to work with. So
You guys have been great too,
Appreciate that.
and we'd love to have you guys back on in a couple weeks. And if you have something to promote or a new episode, let's hop back on and talk some more. You guys are welcome anytime. And thanks again to MDF, Michael Finney, and Robert for joining. Guns, shout out Guns. Appreciate you, King, always showing up and supporting. That's it. Thank you all for joining episode 5 of NFTV. King Tony, thanks for another great week, and we will see you all soon. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, and make sure you guys check out Roads to Rome on Rad or YouTube, preferably Rad. Go to Rad. Don't
Go to Rad.
Go to Rad. And make sure you keep an eye out on the Unethical Cupid release. We'll be putting that on the timeline this week and keeping you guys up to date on that, as well as our free Radical drop that's coming up here this month as well. Have a great weekend, everyone, and thanks for joining. We will see you next time.
Have a great weekend.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you all.
See you guys.